Good morning, I'm Pauline Verzosa. It is Thursday, the 26th of March, and we're bringing you Morning Matters because your mornings matter. And now first on the agenda, President Bongbong Marcos signs into law a measure granting him emergency powers to suspend or reduce fuel excise taxes aimed at easing the impact of soaring oil prices. Here's the report.
Long queues and heavy crowding, commuting in the country now feels like going to war. Passengers are forced to squeeze and push their way just to get a ride. Some MRT and LRT commuters say ridership has increased since fuel prices went up, especially with a 50% fare discount in place.
Minsan po, lalo kapag rush hour, super overwhelming na po. Sobrang siksikan po talaga. Most of the time po, parang mas nagiging hassle po yung pagko-commute sa LRT, MRT. Kahit sabihin po natin mas naliles yung pamasahe kasi mostly po siksikan. Kapag matagal po lalo yung interval, mas dadami po yung nag-wait. So siksikan po lalo yung mga tao. Laanan pa po lalo ng kasi yung LRT na po yung pinaka-convenient sakyan ngayon usually, lalo na po ng mga students.
The situation worsens when train breakdowns occur, like the disruption last night at Taft and Magallanes stations, causing longer lines and waiting times. On Tuesday, nearly 500,000 passengers rode the MRT, while more than 400,000 took the LRT. Meanwhile, along Commonwealth Avenue in Quezon City, passengers struggled to find riders due to limited public transport. Commuters are now forced to improvise.
Arin ko na lang, papuntang Paco. Kaya walang masakyan. Tsaga-tsaga lang din tayo ngayon kasi wala Tataas talaga yung gasolina.
Paano ang balak bukas?
Bala na po.
Other options include the EDSA busway and the UV Express, but UV fares may also increase. All of these are ripple effects of massive oil price hikes linked to the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. President Bongbong Marcos has signed a law granting him emergency powers to suspend or reduce excise taxes on fuel. However, the measure will not be implemented immediately.
Titignan ngayon natin kailan ang pinakamagandang oras, when is the best time to use that new authority, because there are conditions within the law that have to be satisfied. But nonetheless, we are trying to determine because ang mahirap talaga dito is pabago-bago ang presyo. Alam naman ninyo lahat, paggising nyo sa umaga, iba na naman ang presyo. May pronouncement na nanggaling sa US, bababa ang presyo. Tapos mamaya ng konti, tataas na naman. So, mahirap talaga magplano.
The President has also signed Executive Order 110, declaring a state of national energy emergency to address supply and pricing concerns.
Malinaw ang salitang ginamit natin, energy emergency. Hindi ito emergency ng pangkalahatan. It is a very specific and a very precise emergency. It is an emergency of the energy sector, the supply of energy, and the prices of energy. Dahil ang pinagmulan ng problema ay ang supply at ang presyo ng enerhiya. At yun ang kailangan naming tugunan ng direkta agad. Kaya that is why we declared not a general state of emergency but a state of energy emergency.
But some senators say the government response has been too slow.
Sobrang lang ang bagal. Kasi reactive di ba? Isipin mo, narinig mo kahapon mismo, naka-break daw ang Congress. My God, crisis na tayo, naka-break daw ang Congress. Emergency situation, the President may call on the Congress at any time.
Dapat kaagad, nung nangyari ito sa Strait of Hormuz, na-anticipate na natin magkakaroon ng supply issues. No? Unlike sa Ukraine, tumaas nga yung presyo pero walang supply issues yun. No? Kasi hindi naman tayo bumibili sa kanila. So ito dapat na-anticipate kaagad. No? At when I say anticipate, kasama na dito yung pagdadraft ng National Contingency Plan. Kasi nga, ang punto naman natin dito is kailangan guided rin ang publiko at ang lehislatura kung ano ang gagawin sa bawat ibang senaryo.
Lawmakers warn that if the oil crisis is not addressed immediately, jobs could be at risk. Despite concerns over global supply, the President assures that the country's oil supply remains stable for now.
Sa aming analysis, wala tayong problema para sa supply ng petrolyo at saka ng mga petroleum products.
And now let's check the situation along major thoroughfares this morning. We have our mobile journalist Amy Atienza reporting on the ground from Cubao. Amy, kamusta na ang sitwasyon dyan?
Good morning, Pauline. Dito nga tayo sa Cubao, and so far, yung mga pasahero hindi ganoon karami at makikita pa rin natin dito sa aking likuran, may mga jeepney pa rin talaga na bumabiyahe. Kanina may nakausap tayo, Pauline, na ilang mga driver dito mismo sa Cubao at sinabi nila na napagpasyahan nila na magbiyahe nga muna ngayong araw dahil sayang din naman yung around 200 pesos to 300 pesos na kinikita nila kada araw. Bukod pa dyan, meron din tayo mga barker na nakausap. Isa nga si Sir Francisco Antonio Jr. kung saan nabanggit niya na kasabayan ng pagtaas ng presyo ng produktong petrolyo, pati na din ng mga litro ng gasolina at diesel sa iba't ibang gasolinahan, ay yung pagbaba din ng kanilang kinikita bilang barker. So isa yon sa mga issue din talaga na nakikita nila dahil nga around 5 pesos to 10 pesos na lang daw yung binibigay sa kanila instead na nasa around 15 to 30 pesos nung mga dun sa mga biyahe na tinatawag nga nila. So yun, Pauline, so far medyo kalmado naman yung sitwasyon. Doon lang sa may bandang dulo, meron doon nangyayari din mismo yung rally na inorganize ng ilang progressive groups. At yun nga, nakikita natin na nakikiisa naman daw yung ilang mga driver. Yun nga lang, hindi nila kayang pigilan talaga yung pagpapasada dahil nga din sa kawalan ng kita at mahihirapan sila lalo kung hindi sila magtatrabaho at babiyahe ngayong araw.
All right, well, thank you very much for that update. That was mobile journalist Amy Atienza reporting live from Cubao. And at this point, let's head on over to Commonwealth. We have our mobile journalist Ivan Tarinque reporting there this morning. Ivan, maraming sasakyan pa rin ba ang bumabiyahe dyan?
Pauline, so far, nakikita naman natin sa aking likuran, marami pa rin pasahero na nag-aantay yung kanilang mga jeep or mga PUV at mga buses na kanilang pwedeng masakyan. Pero so far, marami namang mga buses at mga PUV. Ang kaibahan nga lang daw ngayon, karamihan ng mga ito ay punuan. Kaya naman yung ilang mga nakausap natin na commuter ng umaga, more than 30 minutes na sila nag-aantay. Pero pahirapan pa rin sila makakuha yung kanilang mga jeep or mga buses na kanilang masabyahe nila papunta nga Welcome Rotonda at yung papunta nga Kamuning. So karamihan ng mga biyaheng yan punuan na. So far tinanggap na nila na malilate sila sa kanilang biyahe ngayong araw at nagpapaalam na nga sila doon sa kanilang mga opisina na malilate sila ng konti dahil nahihirapan silang sumakay ng bus. Ngayon, pakita lang natin yung situation dito sa ating sitwasyon dito sa loob sa may Commonwealth. Ito makikita natin yung current situation. Maraming mga buses, marami ring mga jeep na dumaraan, pero karamihan sa kanila puno na. So ito makikita natin. Ngayon medyo nabawasan na yung mga pasahero, pero kaninang umaga, bandang alas 7 ng umaga, punong-puno yung sa itong sidewalk na yan. At itong PUV stop na to, puno yan ng mga pasahero na nag-aabang na makasakay ng kanilang mga biyahe. Pero so far, kanina, may mga nakita rin naman tayong mga libreng sakay mula sa iba't ibang mga government organizations. So may nakita tayong libreng sakay galing sa PNP na merong biyahe mula rito sa Philcoa papuntang Cubao. At meron din naman tayong nakita mula sa may Congress na mula namang Fairview, papunta naman yan sa may Kamuning. Pauline.
Evan, ano pa yung mga ibang diskarte na nakikita mo mula sa mga commuter? Yung iba ba sa kanila napipilitan na lang din maglakad?
Tama ka dyan, Pauline. Yung iba talaga, ang diskarte nila ngayon is magiging bimodal. Kahit hindi man doon yung diretsyo nilang ruta, kasagain na lang daw nila kahit paano makausad daw sila at makaalis sila dito. Yun daw kasi yung kalsado sa kanilang sinatansya. Baka pag mas hindi sila umalis dito, mas lalo silang mahirapan makapunta doon sa kanilang destinasyon. So yun yung isa sa diskarte nila. Yung iba naman, gumagamit na talaga ng mga PNPS app. Napipilitan na sila gumamit ng PNPS app para kahit paano daw, diretso man yung biyahe, medyo mapapamahal lang daw sila. Ang importante naman daw, makakapunta sila at makakapasok sila sa kanilang mga trabaho at kanilang mga eskwelahan. Pauline?
Oo, pero dagdag gastos rin yan, Evan, ano? Pero doon naman sa mga commuter na nakausap mo, ano ba yung reaksyon nila doon sa hinihiling din ng mga transport workers ng dagdag pasahe? Alam naman natin na defer muna yan ano, ng presidente, yung fare hike na 1 peso sa base fare ng mga traditional jeepneys. Pero on the side of commuters, naiintindihan ba nila na kahit papano, kailangan din natin tulungan yung mga nasa transport sector?
Alam mo, Puli, karamihan nga nung ating mga nakausap dito, no, naintindihan naman daw nila kung kakailanganin na talaga itaas yung presyo ng pamasahe, no, kahit nga daw 1 peso yan, okay lang daw sila, naintindihan daw nila dahil nga, karamihan nga kasi ng mga nabubuong storya ngayon, lalo na yung mga galing sa side ng mga jeepney drivers, mas talagang lumiit nga yung kanilang kita dahil nga doon sa mahal ng produktong petrolyo. Pero so far sa ngayon, naintindihan naman daw nila ito kung magdagdag pa ng fare hike, pero isin na lang daw kahit na medyo mabigat sa pulsa nila na kahit na dapat ilalagay nila ito sa ibang budget ng kanilang pang araw-araw na gastusin. Pero okay lang daw, makatulong lang daw sa mga kapatid natin mga super.
All right, well, thank you very much for that report. That was mobile journalist Ivan Tarinque reporting from Commonwealth. Another transport strike is underway as drivers protest rising fuel costs. And we now go live to mobile journalist Arles de los Santos reporting from Quezon City. Arles, sino ba ang nangunguna ng transport strike dyan?
Muling magandang umaga na tayo ngayon no, sa Cubao, ito sa Quezon City. Sa itong transport strike na to ay pinangungunahan nga no, ng Road to Oil Price Hike Coalition kung saan ang kanilang panawagan ay yung pagbuwag na sa old regulation din, gayon din ang pag-alis sa VAT at excise tax sa lagis no, na nagpapahirap daw sa ating mga gobyerno. Kaya kung ipapakita ko sa inyo dito ngayon sa ating paligid, yung kanilang mga watawid nila, kanilang mga watawag, at yung mga super, hawak ang kanilang mga panawagan na kontrolin ang presyo ng langis at iba pa pati ang produkto. And then dito naman, sa bahaging ito, yung mga tsuper na at yung ibang mga civil groups, no, civil society groups, ay patuloy na nagsasagawa ng ikalawang bahagi ng kanilang programa. Yung first part kasi ay nagkaroon ng pagkakataon na magsalita yung mga tsuper at yung ilang mga mababatas gaya ni na Akbayan ACT Teachers Party List Representative Antonio Tino at si Kabataan Party List Representative Relico. Ito, puliin yung kanilang mga paandar dito, no? Patuloy ang pagsilit ng presyo ng langis, patuloy and then krisis sa ekonomiya at politika. And then dito naman, meron silang parang beer pong na kanilang pwedeng batuhin yung mga nandito yung mukha ng mga world leaders, si Pangulong Bongbong Marcos, and then si US President Donald Trump at si Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. No? And then, dito naman, yung kanilang placards naman dito, labanan ng oil price hike, kung saan yung mga kadalasan na mga petrolyo na nabibili ay inilagay nila no, yung amount na kinikita ng mga kumpanya na ito at yung kanilang mga opinion at saloobin patungkol dito. Pero meron din dito mula naman sa Pamalakaya Pulin na eto, yung kanilang placard ay nakalagay sa isang tilabingwit na kung saan kaysa din sa panawagan na buwagin na nga yung oil deregulation law at yung pagbibigay prioridad doon sa ating mga mangingisda na kasama nga sa apektado itong patuloy na pagtaas ng presyo ng petrol.
So Arles, hindi lamang transport workers ang kasama sa strike na yan, ano, sa demonstration na yan. Nandiyan din ang ilang mga miyembro ng agriculture sector, ang mga farmers, ang mga fisher folks. Ang panawagan nila, itanggalin na ang excise tax. We know that the president has already signed this law that will give him powers no to suspend. Pero sabi ng Pangulo, hindi mo na i-implement yan kasi dapat may tamang timing din eh. Pero para sa grupo na nandyan, Arles, tingin ba nila ngayon na dapat i-implement itong pag-suspend ng excise tax?
Piliin natin na mapapaghadat talaga itong grupo ng gusto at iba pa mga progresibo grupo sa naging tubod nga ni Pangulong Bongbong Marcos dito sa nilay oil crisis at energy crisis nga no, na kinaharap ng bansa. And hindi daw Pangulong Marcos ng emergency powers pero wala naman daw konkretong programa kung paano at kailan ito gagamitin. And then yun nga, yung emergency powers naman to suspend. yung excise tax, matagal na raw nilang hinihintay ito. At actually nga, yung grupo Manibela sinabi na kung susipigyan ng excise tax at that means ay pwede silang itigil yung kanilang kilos sa protesta. Pero hanggang ngayon, hindi pa rin yung nagiging epekto. Pero bukas ay magkakaroon ulit. Susunod na bahagi ang kanilang programa kung saan mag-arali naman sila. Yung grupo Manibela, doon sa Manila, sa Huwag Rotonda, patutulit sa Malacanang.
All right, well, thank you very much. That was mobile journalist Arles de los Santos reporting from Quezon City. Now, don't go away. We will be back with more stories right after this break. Keep it here on One News. Good morning and welcome back. I'm Pauline Verzosa, and here on Morning Matters, we talk about the most pressing issues and we give you the context behind the headlines. Vice President Sara Duterte was a no-show at her impeachment hearing in the House of Representatives. Her legal counsels from Fortun, Narvasa, and Salazar Law expressed their sentiments about the proceedings instead via a statement to the panel. They criticized Justice Committee Chair Representative Jervin Luistra's remarks for describing the process as a mini-trial ahead of a full-blown one in the Senate. The Vice President's counsels also labeled the House hearing as unconstitutional.
We believe that the committee really has no jurisdiction to conduct any form of trial. There was no disrespect intended because in fact we had responded to the invitation that was extended to us, signed by the chairperson of the committee, and we had submitted this even before the committee hearing today. So we don't know, we don't understand how that could be a form of disrespect.
Well, Bicol Sara Party List Representative Terry Redon countered that the Vice President's camp is just making excuses to once again evade accountability. The next session will be on April 14 after the Holy Week.
This particular position of the councils and of the Vice President herself is basically a legal word salad. Ibig sabihin po, wala po itong batayan sa katotohanan. Ito po ay legal na pagpapalusot para lusutan na naman pong muli ang pagpapanagot sa mga impeachable offenses laban sa atin pong pangalawang Pangulo.
And to break down the latest developments in the impeachment proceedings against Vice President Sara Duterte, we are joined by Bukidnon 2nd District Representative Jonathan Keith Flores. He is also the Vice Chair of the House Committee on Justice. Good morning, Congressman. Thanks for being here on the program.
Well, good morning, Pauline. Thank you for having me.
All right, so Congressman, yesterday the Vice President and her legal team were a no-show on the first day of the hearings. Was that expected on your end, and how will that affect the proceedings moving forward?
Well, I wasn't surprised, but it wasn't expected. I was hoping that she would show up, but since she didn't, then I think they have legal reasons for not showing up also.
Okay, what are those legal reasons for you, Congressman?
Well, they're questioning the constitutionality of the proceedings yesterday, so they didn't want to participate. That's what I heard from their press conference of their lawyer. So sa tingin ko, yun ang reason bakit hindi sila sumipot, because they intend to question the constitutionality of the proceedings that were held yesterday.
Well, I know they're citing violations of due process. They say there are double standards. May basehan po ba yung kanilang arguments, Congressman?
But sa akin wala po eh. Yung due process, parang sobrang we've extended so much, we invited her, we waited for her answer, we asked them to join us yesterday. So kung due process ang pinag-uusapan, lahat po ng forms of due process ay binigay po natin sa Vice President as what is required by law also. No? As far as double standard is concerned, sa tingin ko wala naman po. No? We decided it based on the appreciation of the members, no? Kung ano yung my form at saka substance, and we've come up with this.
If the Vice President and her legal team continue to decline participating in these hearings, what happens there, Congressman? How will the committee ensure that there is still due process and that will be upheld despite their non-participation?
Well, for as long as we keep inviting them and opening our doors to welcome them, if ever they decide to appear, then that will be compliant with the due process requirement. Ang importante lang is they have an opportunity to be heard. Nasa kanila na po if they take advantage of that opportunity or if they waive that opportunity to be heard.
Because on the part of the defense, they're saying that the House also does not have jurisdiction to hold proceedings of this nature, and that the role of the House here should be limited to reviewing the complaint and the attached evidence and not building a case. What's your reaction to that, Congressman? In determining probable cause at this stage of the impeachment process, may limitations po ba doon sa inyong powers?
I'm sure hindi naman absolute yung powers namin, no? But ang limitations, I think we still fall within the limitations, no? Kasi in determining probable cause, kung may clarificatory questions gusto ang members of the Justice Committee, they can still call for meetings to clarify matters. They can call on witnesses and they can ask questions for them to be clarified to determine kung may probable cause nga pa or wala before we proceed with the trial in the Senate. So it's unfair naman to say na sumobra yung powers, no? Kasi I think it's part of determining probable cause ang pag-clarify din on matters na sa tingin namin needs clarification.
But what do the House rules say, Kong, kasi sabi ng ilan, na it should be the complainant securing and presenting the evidence. So they're questioning the authority of the committee and the House of Representatives to issue nga yung mga subpoenas. Yesterday, we already saw multiple subpoenas being issued. Do the rules state, the House rules state that you can do that and also examine witnesses?
Well, the issuance of compulsory processes are part of the rules, no? Na allowed kami to issue subpoenas and to request for documents. That's very clear naman sa rules namin na pwede namin gawin. Ang examination of witnesses are for clarificatory questions nga, no? Like let's say, you want to test the testimony ba of the credibility ba of Madriaga or something like that, no? Para klaro din sa lahat na ang sinasabi niya is in line with the affidavit that was attached to the complaint.
And the defense here is also zeroing in on the term mini trial, Kong, no? They cited the earlier remarks of Congresswoman Jerby Luistro in an interview. How can we reconcile siguro the use of that term? I believe some of the members already clarified that that wasn't the intent. Kong Zamora said it was just used loosely to compare, to help the public understand ano ba talaga exactly itong stage in the impeachment process. But if you have the defense saying the use of that word mini trial, parang may intent na kasi yung panel to use this stage of the process as exactly that, a trial, even before this goes to the Senate.
Well, klaruin natin, no? What we can do and what we cannot do. First, dyan sa House po, we cannot determine kung guilty ba or not guilty si Vice President, no? That's for the Senate to do in the trial. Ang paggamit naman sa term na mini trial ay tama kayo, no? I first heard it also from the chairperson, Jinky Luistro, in one of her interviews. But it was explained yesterday na ginamit ito para lang ma-explain kung ano ang mangyari. Kasi baka malilito na yung tao eh. There was already determination of form, there was already determination of substance, there was determination of grounds, and yet we're still continuing with clarificatory hearings. So ano tong clarificatory hearings na to? So siguro to make it more understandable to everyone, ginamit lang yung term na mini trial. But it's not a trial at all, no? A trial is where the prosecution is given the opportunity to present and then the defense is given an opportunity to present also, no? That's a trial. In this particular instance, walang ganon, no? We will just be asking clarificatory questions on matters where we think kailangan pa maklarify ng mga complainants.
Siguro to help our viewers understand also, Congressman, how do we draw the line between determining probable cause and conducting what critics might interpret as a full-blown trial?
Well, siguro, in a trial, you present your witness, no? Parang ipapasalaysay mo sa kanya yung anong whatever testimony that they may have to offer. But in a clarificatory or hearing, the members will just ask questions, no? Na kung ano ang sa tingin nila kulang pa ng clarification as far as the complaints are concerned. So, yan ang basic understanding ko of what we're supposed to be doing, no? So, it's different from a trial where the prosecution and defense take turns. Dito, parang kung saan lang ang may kailangan pang clarification, dun lang po magfo-focus.
Oh, because at this stage, probable cause lang ang dinedetermine, right, Congressman? But last year, the Supreme Court also emphasized that in their ruling, following the Duterte versus House of Representatives case, that respondents in impeachment proceedings must be given a chance to be heard before any case is transmitted to the Senate. By having these clarificatory hearings, ito na po ba yung compliance nyo with that requirement of the Supreme Court? And are you confident that you are also fully complying with all constitutional requirements?
Well, as I said earlier, no, the opportunity to be heard or the right to be heard to comply with due process is already complied with. We've invited them. We've asked them to file their answer. We've asked them to participate in the proceedings, in the clarificatory hearings, and it is for them, no, to decide whether they will appear or not. It is for them to decide whether they will avail of this opportunity to be heard or waive that opportunity to be heard. So nasa kampo po ng Vice President yan. And from what we've seen yesterday, they've decided not to avail of this opportunity to be heard because they're questioning the constitutionality of the proceedings that are being undertaken in the House right now.
Yesterday, we spoke to Congressman Joel Chua at sabi nga po niya, no, you're not just being cautious, extra cautious na nga po ang House of Representatives in conducting this impeachment process. But let's go to the events that happened yesterday, Kong. The committee issued multiple subpoenas as part of its evidence gathering process. Let's walk through the significance of each, starting with the one to the NBI on the alleged threats. What exactly are you hoping to establish there by getting the investigation of the NBI? Alam naman natin the video, or beyond confirming that the video was not AI generated, are you also looking into whether there was a clear plan to carry out the threats?
Well, yeah, that's one of the things siguro that they wanted to find out, no? Kasi they asked for the results of the investigation of the NBI. Yan po yung saan narinig ko na hinihingi kahapon in one of the subpoenas. To siguro determine din kung ano bang resulta ng investigation nila. Where did those statements lead to, or what was the basis of the statements made by the Vice President in that video that was shown, that everybody has technically seen, no?
How about doon po sa allegations of unexplained wealth? There are subpoenas now for VP Sara Salin, yung kanyang income tax returns from 2007 to 2025, including that of her husband, Mans Carpio, pati na rin SEC corporate records. What's the significance of that, Kong? And why weren't her bank records subpoenaed here?
I think this was to establish yung sinasabi nilang gap in the declaration sa salience niya, no? The wealth gap that na sinasabi nila in the complaints. But in one of those subpoenas kasi that was requested, I voted together with Congressman Rufus Rodriguez to oppose it, no? Kasi ang point ko naman dito is we should stick to the ruling of the Supreme Court na dapat i-limit natin to the periods where she was Vice President or where she occupied already a position that may be considered impeachable. So to ask for things that were done or that were recorded prior to her occupying that impeachable office, for me, is not compliant with the ruling of the Supreme Court.
And what timeline are you looking at for this whole impeachment process moving forward, Kong? Your next hearing is on April 14. That's after the Holy Week already. By that time, are you expecting na makukuha na po itong mga documents na ipinasapina?
Well, ang isang sigurado ako, there will be legal questions. No? So there might some parties or either the persons who are in possession of these documents might ask for relief from the courts. No? Tama ba na ibigay ko to? Tama ba na i-release ko to? Or the camp of the VP might question, no? Or it might go to the Supreme Court again to question the power of the Committee on Justice to request for these documents. So the timeline, we're bound to finish it within 60 days, Pero as far as the documents that were requested or subpoenaed, I really cannot answer that, no?
All right, well, we're just going to have to wait and see. But for now, thank you very much for joining us and for sharing all your insights. That was Bukidnon 2nd District Representative Jonathan Keith Flores.
Thank you, Pauline.
Now do stay tuned. Morning Matters will be back after this short break. Keep it here. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. Thousands of delivery service riders in Metro Manila will start receiving their 5,000 peso cash assistance from the Department of Social Welfare and Development today. And for the latest, we have our mobile journalist Francis Rivera reporting to us live from one of the payout sites. Francis, kamusta na ang sitwasyon dyan?
Good morning, Pauline. Nandito tayo ngayon sa Quezon City at libo-libong mga delivery rider na nga ang kumukuha ng kanilang mga ayuda na 5,000 pesos. And ayon sa pamunuan, as early as 5 a.m. Mahaba na raw yung pila at ikot ko lang kayo dito, no. Ayan, dito yung payout kung saan dito nila kinukuha yung mismong 5,000. Ayan, ikot ko yung camera natin para mas makita natin yung sitwasyon. Ayan, so medyo may kahabaan itong area na ito kaya medyo marami ang kayang i-accommodate. At dito sa labas naman, ito kita natin yung kahabaan ng pila. So isa lang to sa mga entrance ng payout center na ito, no? At mahaba pa to hanggang dun to sa may Quezon City Circle mismo. At ayan, as you can see, kailangan muna nilang dumaan sa mga verification kung saan hinihingian sila ng hard copy ng kanilang mga lisensya at syempre kailangan din ng pirma doon, no, mga tatlong pirma at bago sila makapunta dito sa mga pila at iba-iba yung mga dito, iba-iba yung mga payout o iba-iba yung mga releasing area nila. So meron dito ito yung kinakatayuan natin at meron pa dun sa kabila, no, kasi ayon sa LGU ng Manila ay nasa 30,000 ang kukuha ng kanilang mga ayuda, no, at hinati nga nila ito sa 2 araw, so 15 ngayon at magiging 15 din para bukas. Pauline?
All right. Well, thank you very much for that. That was mobile journalist Francis Rivera reporting live from Quezon City. As we know, President Bongbong Marcos has declared a state of national energy emergency amid rising global oil prices. Under Executive Order 110, the government is rolling out a whole-of-government response framework called Uplift, aimed at stabilizing energy supply. The Department of Energy is tasked to secure fuel supply and implement conservation measures, while other agencies are directed to help cushion its impact. Authorities are also ordered to act against hoarding and profiteering as the government works to maintain stability amid ongoing global uncertainties. The energy emergency will remain in effect for 1 year unless lifted earlier by the president. And now to help us unpack the economic impact of rising oil prices, we're joined by Emmanuel Leco, President and Chief Economist of Credit Rating and Investor Services Philippines, and a Senior Fellow at the Center for People Empowerment in Governance, or CENPEG. Noel, glad to have you back here on the show. Good morning and thanks for being here.
Good morning, Pauline. Thank you, and glad to be back here.
Okay, Noel, so with the government now declaring a state of national energy emergency, how significant is its impact in addressing the current fuel crisis?
I think it's the most important, the government's the most important player in the country, and having declared a state of emergency, but actually what they declared was a state of energy emergency. I'm not sure if they're trying to move away from declaring a full-blown national state of emergency so that they will not have to do a number of things that are required in a state of emergency. So I think the government will have to clarify that. First of all, the declaration did not indicate that they will be able to control prices, put a cap on prices that will be that may be imposed by oil companies and prices of prime commodities. So last night I was watching the press conference of the president, and he refused to respond to the question concerning price caps. That is very concerning. Although there's already a declaration, the most important issue I don't think was addressed adequately.
Well, this is now the third straight week already of rising fuel prices. Gasoline is up by 12 pesos per liter, diesel up by 17 pesos per liter. Noel, at what point does this level of increase begin to significantly slow down our economic activity?
Well, as it is, I think it's already slowing down our economic activities. There are also reports of companies or stores, offices that are slowing down. There are gasoline stations that I'm not sure if they closed permanently, temporarily, or only the day before the day when the high prices came into effect. So I think those are issues that need to be monitored and need to be closely supervised by the government. Nobody should take advantage of this crisis so that they will make more money. I think in addition to the declaration of an energy emergency by the government, they will also have to consider, and I think that is also in full effect, the Price Act and full implementation of the oil deregulation law, which has a provision that allows the government to intervene whenever the stability or security of the industry is being threatened.
And yesterday, President Marcos signed into law what gives him emergency powers to suspend excise taxes on fuel, but it's not in effect yet. The president says certain conditions must be met. But for you, Noel, should the government suspend excise taxes now, or is it more prudent to wait for a more severe trigger?
I think it should have been signed earlier and it should have been implemented much, much earlier. The impact of high prices in oil and other petroleum products are already being felt in the market right now. And it's already creating an impact on our economy. Definitely, it is slowing us down. And people are already carrying the heavy burden of higher prices in the market right now. So I think the government or the president should not hesitate. I'm not sure what else they are looking for in order to say that there is a crisis. You know, that is really bothersome. In the beginning, the government, through the Department of Energy, has always been saying that there is no crisis. So it was a welcome development when the president finally signed an energy emergency statement. So I think that is a major acknowledgement. But then, if there is already an acknowledgement that there is a crisis, I think responses that should address the crisis should already be done as well. The bill or the law has already been signed, and therefore there should not be any more delay for the president to take action in making at least getting the excise tax either suspended or reduced. I would suggest that it be suspended during the crisis.
You're right, because transport workers are already clamoring for that. They get to save 10 pesos per liter for gasoline, and that's also about 6 pesos in savings for diesel. But given the sustained increase in fuel prices, Noel, what's your outlook now for inflation for March?
Oh, definitely. I think the inflation already kicked up. If they used to talk about 2%, 2.2, 2.4, I think it will not be very far. It will not be a remote idea to see inflation reaching as high as 3% during the first quarter.
DepEd Secretary Balisacan has warned that inflation could even reach double digits to as high as 14.3%, but that's under a worst-case scenario. What policies, Noel, should the government be implementing now to cushion the impact if inflation does accelerate to that level?
Well, definitely inflation reflects the movements of prices towards higher levels. So the government should, first of all, move in order to put a cap, put a ceiling, put the runaway prices under control. And they should start with putting a cap on prices of oil and other petroleum products. Definitely, they should address the runaway prices that we are seeing right now. And meanwhile, the people who are experiencing this, the ayuda of 5,000 pesos may not necessarily go to petroleum products, but will be spent using the usual consumption of the households, to buy food and to buy other essentials. So 5,000 is not going to be very much. 5,000 will not last very long. So I think the government should do more in order to ensure that the people will have enough safety nets, enough support that will prevent wider hunger in the country. Remember, more than 50% of our population does not have excess income. Many of our people, many of us are minimum wage earners, and they just bring enough or not even enough home for them to be able to sustain the daily requirements. So if the government is not able to adequately support the population, there will be a much wider hunger, poverty that we are seeing, that we will see in the near future.
And earlier this week, Noel, the peso closed against the dollar at an all-time low of 60 to 30. Yesterday, it closed at 60.10. What does a weaker peso mean now for an ordinary Filipino?
That will mean higher prices of prime commodities that we import. The Philippines is a net importer country, and therefore our import bill will only go higher. Without the price increases in commodities that we import, they will already appear to be much higher. So in addition to the higher prices of petroleum in the market, that is also being that is worsened by the continuous depreciation of the Philippine peso. Our import bill will become higher, and therefore we will see inflation to be much higher. Prices of prime commodities for us will definitely be much higher and heavier for households to carry.
I guess all we can do right now is to brace ourselves. But for now, thank you very much for joining us. That was Emmanuel Leco, President and Chief Economist of Credit Rating and Investor Services Philippines and Senior Fellow at CENPEG. Thanks, Noel.
Thank you, Pauline. Good.
And now let's get insights from political pundit Ronald Llamas. Good morning, Sir Ronald.
Hi, good morning, Pauline. Oh, long time no see.
Yes, happy Thursday.
Hey.
Okay, Sir Ronald, first, what is your reaction to the President declaring a state of national energy emergency? Kasama na dyan, no, yung pagbuo ng Uplift Committee to ensure that the country will have a stable supply. Ano po ba magiging significance ng declaration na ito?
Sabi nga ni Mr. Leco, it's long overdue. Dahil alam naman natin yung ating situation when the war in Iran started. Alam natin yung problema natin sa limited reserves dahil sa ating oil deregulation law na dapat i-review na. No? Pero immediately, dapat naghanda na para dito sa crisis na ito. Imaginein mo, Pauline, kung tumagal at least 1 month itong gera, depleted yung ating reserves. So, yung pagtaas ng presyo at yung pagkakulang o pagkawala ng ating reserves are really dapat pinaghahandaan earlier. Hindi ka nagdedeklara ng state of emergency pag may emergency na. Dapat pinaghahandaan mo na. Alam natin na ayaw ng gobyerno magpanik ang mga tao. Pero gusto rin dapat ng gobyerno na makapaghanda sila. magsimula magtipid, magsimula ayusin yung kanilang mga pananaw tungkol halimbawa sa pagtitipid, sa pagbiyahe, no, etc. So, whole of nation approach ito hindi lang ito gobyerno. So kung na-declare itong mas maaga, mas nakapaghanda lahat. Itong krisis na ito ay unprecedented. Iba yung nangyari noong panahon ng Ukraine. No, ito ay mas malapit pa do sa tanker wars noong 1980s. Na talagang pag nasarahan yung Hormuz Strait, ay talagang marami yung maapektuhan. Hindi lang langis, hindi lang LPG, kung hindi pati halimbawa fertilizer. At yan ay pwedeng umabot dun sa Saudi Arabia. No, dahil nga nandoon yung mga kaalyado ng Iran, yung mga Houthis sa Yemen. So, dapat talaga, hindi lang ito national calamity. This is a global calamity. Marami sa mga bansa, lalo na yung mga kapitbahay natin, ay earlier nang naghanda. At dapat din i-mitigate ng ating gobyerno yung pag-impact nito sa atin. Halimbawa, more than 100% yung increase ng ating langis. Bakit yung ating mga kapitbahay, ang pinakamataas na ay 45%, yung Malaysia? So, may problema tayo. Ang taas ng impact nito sa atin, hindi na protektahan yung consumers. Pero sa ibang mga bansa sa ating kapitbahay ay less than 45%. Halimbawa, yung pagtaas ng langis, etc. etc. So, ano yung problema? Bakit mas matindi yung tama sa atin kaysa sa ating mga kapitbahay?
Well, kanina Sir Ronald, pinoint out nga ni Sir Emmanuel Leyco na parang may kulang doon sa executive order. Kulang yung kung ano ba yung magiging plano to control prices. Do you agree with that? And ano po ba ang dapat maging priority after declaring this executive order on a state of national energy emergency?
Yes, dahil hindi ka lang dapat magdeklara ng state of emergency or state of energy emergency. Talagang emergency ang kailangan. Tapos dapat lagyan mo ng laman, Pauline. Anong ibig sabihin ng state of energy emergency? No, dahil titingnan ng tao yung laman Halimbawa, yung mga alam natin limitado ang pondo ng gobyerno, pero merong calamity fund ang gobyerno, around 40 billion yata. Alam natin na may pondo yung Department of Budget, mga 230 billion yata, no? Etc. etc. Yung gobyerno may mga intelligence at saka confidential funds. Di hatiin mo na 'yon, no? Makatulong ka pa dahil hindi naman natin alam paano ginagamit 'yon. So yung mga confidential at saka intelligence fund, ipat mo na. Alam mo ba, ang presidente meron yatang 5 billion. O kunin mo na kagad yung kalahati nun. Tapos yung mga ibang mga ahensya na may intelligence at confidential fund, ipat na. Ikalawa, halimbawa, yung mga ahensya o GOCC ng gobyerno na may sariling mga rules na hindi pwedeng gawin ng gobyerno. Halimbawa, SSS, GSIS, PhilHealth, no? Itigil yung paniningil ng utang pansamantala. Tapos, pautangin, bigyan ng calamity funds yung kanilang mga miyembro. Lalo na yung mga pamilya ng ating mga OFW. Ang ibig ko lang sabihin at yung sinasabi ni Mr. Leyco, merong pagkukunan ng pondo para dito sa emergency na ito. Bakit hindi nakalagay? Halimbawa, yung bilanggit ni Mr. Leyco, yung mga minimum wage earner, that's 6 to 7 million nationwide at 3 million mahigit sa National Capital Region. Hindi yan bibigyan ng ayuda for now. No? Pero yan yung tatamaan Yan yung mga day-to-day lamang ang kinikita para makakain. So bigyan mo ng ayuda. Para binabanggit ko na possible sources of funds.
Okay. Sir Ronald, in an interview, sinabi rin ni President Marcos that he's open to restarting discussions with Beijing on a joint energy project for oil and gas exploration in the South China Sea. What's your reaction to that? Ano po bang magiging implications ng ganung joint exploration?
Medyo malabo yan. Nung sinubukan yan sa Duterte government, very optimistic sila. Pero walang nangyari. Bakit? Dahil halimbawa, kung mag-oil drilling, ang tatanungin dyan, sino ba ang may majority control? Ang sabi ng gobyerno noon, si Secretary Alan Peter Cayetano ng Foreign Affairs, 60-40. Tayo ang 60, tayo ang 40. Siyempre, hindi papayag ang China ron dahil gusto nila, sila ang may control ng West Philippine Sea. Diba? Tayo naman, hindi rin tayo makakapayag na sila yung 60-40. Bakit? Labag sa ating konstitusyon yon. At i-undermine nun yung ating victory, historic victory sa UNCLOS. Yun yung una, diba? Medyo kanyan, very delicate. Lalong-lalo na sa ating konstitusyon. Ikalawa, that will take time. Hindi siya makakatulong dito sa krisis. Dekada yan eh. Tapos na yung termino ng presidente, ay pinag-uusapan pa lang yan. Pero ang mahalaga ay hindi maapektuhan yung ating teritoryo. Dahil ang mangyayari dyan, ino-normalize natin yung occupation ng China sa ating exclusive economic zone. Yun yung delikado. Pag binuksan ng presidente yung ganyang klaseng usapin. Tingin ko, ill-advise yung presidente dyan.
Sabi mo nga, Sir Ronald, that will take time. So, what are low-hanging fruits here? What can the government do quickly to address the crisis, to arrest this emergency situation? Tingin niyo po ba dapat nang isuspend din ang excise tax on fuel? Kasi parang hatiran yung opinion dyan. Sabi ni Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, dapat yan na lang yung last resort kasi may repercussions din yan. Marami naman daw tayong tools, marami tayong interventions, mechanisms, and we don't have to use them daw all at once.
Well, makakabawas kasi yan around 10 pesos dun sa presyo ng langis. So, hindi siya pwedeng stand-alone lang. O dapat kasama niya yung ibang options sa pinag-uusapan natin kanina. Kalawa, ay halimbawa, mas malakas yung impact kung tatanggalin yung VAT sa gasolina at sa pagkain. Dahil yan, diretso ang tama o diretso ang epekto sa ordinaryong mamamayan, halimbawa sa kuryente. Ang mababawas niyan sa presyo ng gasolina, mga 14 to 15 pesos. So, may impact yan. At lalo na sa pagkain. Dahil every little bit helps. Yun yung mahalaga rito. Pero yung sinasabi ko nga kanina, yung ating mga GOCC, trilyon ang pondo niyan. So, gamitin nila para yung mga miyembro nila tulungan. GSIS, PhilHealth, SSS. Tapos yung mga iba nating mga ahensya, dapat, sabi ko nga, yung mga savings nila, at saka yung kanilang intelligence at saka confidential fund, ipat na. Ikatlo, dapat, mismo sa ating oil deregulation law, in times of emergency, pwedeng temporarily i-take over o i-co-manage ng gobyerno yung ating mga oil companies. Problema sa ating mga oil companies, mismo yung krisis, pinapakinabangan o ine-exploit. Dahil ang bilis tumaas ng presyo ng langis. Ang tawag nila racket. Pero pag bumaba yung presyo ng langis, parang feather. Ang bagal bumaba. Tapos yung bilyong-bilyong dolyar na kinita ng mga oil companies, ayaw nilang bawasan. Lahat pass on sa consumer. Hindi pwede yun. Dapat bahagi tayo ng krisis, dapat bahagi tayo sa mag-share ng burden. So even sa ating oil deregulation law, pwedeng i-take over o i-co-manage ng gobyerno itong mga big players na ito, itong mga oil companies na ito. Panghuli, pwedeng kausapin ng gobyerno yung mga pinakamayayaman sa ating bansa. Yumayaman naman kayo, bilyon-bilyon. Pwede bang mag-contribute kayo, mag-pot kayo? Tigi 1 bilyon. Tigi 1 bilyon kayo, ipat natin para tulong. later on, next year, pwede ninyong gamitin yan for tax deduction.
Oo.
So, pwedeng gawin ang gobyerno. No? Tatawagan ng mga oil companies, tatawagan ng mayayaman, yung kanilang excess funds, ipapat. Hindi pwedeng sabihin na walang pera ang gobyerno. Yan yung sabihin ng state of emergency na dapat earlier na paghandaan para earlier na gawa yan. Rather than sisimulan pa lang ngayon. Yun yung sinasabi ni Mr. Leco. Yung laman, yung substance ng state of emergency ay mahalaga para ipakita sa tao na mayroong solusyon.
Right.
At tayo,
Kung ano talaga,
namumuno.
kung ano talaga ang contingency plan ng government, ano? But for now, thank you very much for sharing your time and your insights with us. Maraming salamat, Political Pundit Ronald Llamas.
Magdeng Khalid.
In other news, motorists and drivers are feeling the impact of rising fuel prices with long lines and higher costs reported at gasoline stations. And now we go live to Mobile Journal Merimon Reyes in Manila for the situation on the ground. Merimon, kamusta na ba yung presyohan dyan?
Pauline, mataas ang presyo pero mababa ang perang pwedeng panggastos. Yan yung sinasabi sa atin ng mga motorista na kausap natin dito sa isang gasoline station along Espanya Boulevard. Ang problema lang dito, especially sa mga jeepney drivers, mga PUV drivers, for example, may traditional jeepney kanina, ang kinarga niya ay 600 pesos. So around 5 liters pa lang yun, so mangangalahati pa lang daw yun sa litro at hindi na rin kayang magkarga ng full tank. Ang nagiging take home nila dito, kasi sabihin natin 600 yung naging budget hanggang 1,000 para sa pagpapakarga ng diesel, meron pa raw silang boundary. At swerte na lang daw, ibang mga operator, binabaan na yung iba from 650, naging 600 or 550. Pero ang nagiging take home na lang nila is around 300 to 500 pesos. Same din yan sa mga modern jeepneys. Ang kargado nga nila, yung 7.8 liters, around the 900 pesos na yun. Pero isang biyahe pa lang daw, pwede nang maubos yun. Yung isang ikutan daw nila yun sa isang araw, yun yung nagiging budget nila, around 8,000 pesos. Plus, yung kanilang pang magiging boundary na 2,000 pesos. So, halimbawa, ito yung traditional jeepney. Ang take home na lang nila, nakausap natin kanina si Sir Bara Sierva from QC. Pamilya siya ng 5. Ang pinaghahati-hatian daw nila ay 300 pesos. Pero so far, sa mga nakausap natin dito, sabi naman ng gasolinahan, hindi raw matumal ang masyado yung mga nagpapakarga. Pero ang napansin nila, madalang na yung nagpapa-full tank agad-agad, especially for PUV drivers. Pero then again, as much as possible, nag-offer din sila dito ng mga discount o kaya naman ng biyahe discount promo. For example, sa mga TNVS drivers, sa PUV drivers, meron sila kada litro, meron silang diskwento na binibigay para raw makatulong sa mga ngailangang sektor. Pauline.
All right. Well, thank you very much para sa report na yan. Mobile Journal, Merimon Reyes reporting from Manila. The impact of rising fuel prices is also now being felt at public markets, with prices of some goods possibly going up. For details, let's bring in Mobile Journal, Jazz Paredes reporting at the Pasig Public Market. Jazz, may mga bilihin na ba na nagtaas ng presyo?
Pauline, as of now, umaalit talaga yung ilan sa mga mamimili natin dito sa Pasig Mega Market dahil nga sa bahagyang pagtaas ng ilan sa mga basic commodities o mga presyo ng bilihin dito sa palengke. Sa ngayon, ang nakikita nating presyo, hindi naman siya masyadong tumaas, Pauline, pero nakikita natin na nasa 5 hanggang 10 piso yung itanaas ng ilan sa ating mga basic commodities. Ang local well milled rice, naninatili na 45 to 46 pesos per kilo. Ngunit nung nag-ikot-ikot tayo kanina, bukod dun sa mga local well milled rice, ay pumapatak din sa 55 to 65 pesos per kilo yung iba mga klase ng bigas. At meron din tayo mga presyo ng tilapia na mula 150 ay tumaas ng 170. Galunggong na nananatili naman sa 360 pesos per kilo. Ang itlog nananatili din sa 8 pesos ang minimum na presyo nito. At ang presyo naman ng sibuyas, pumapatak na ng 140 pesos. At para naman sa mga iba pang gulay, meron din tayo, nung nakaraan ay tumaas ang presyo ng kamatis ng 250 pesos per kilo. At ilan nga sa ating mga mamimili na nakausap kanina, napapansin nila na imbes na mas mura ang presyo ng gulay, mas napapamahal pa sila. At even yung mga presyo ng ilan sa ating mga isda, gaya ng galunggong, mataas na rin yung presyo. Kaya naman, imbes na mga healthy o yung mga mas maganda sa kalusugan na pagkain, napipilitan silang bumili ng mga alternatibong pagkain, gaya ng mga canned goods. Dahil mas dito daw sila makakamura, kahit gusto man daw nila na bumili ng mga pang full meal talaga, nag-o-opt na lang sila doon sa mga
mga ready to go na pagkain na mas mura kung tutuusin. At ito nga sa likod ko, Pauline, meron tayong mga grupo na nagkikilos protesta, simula daw sila noong March 19. At iba-iba yung kanilang ipinaglalaban dito. Meron tayong mga manggagawa, mga jeepney driver, at meron din naman tayong mga estudyante. At ayon sa kanila, ito daw kasing taas presyo ng gasolina, hindi lamang mga driver yung apektado, kundi pati yung mga regular nating manggagawa. Ang panawagan nila, ipaba itong presyo ng VAT, tanggalin, at pataasin din yung sahod ng ating mga manggagawa dahil sa pagtaas nga ng gasolina, tumataas din ang presyo ng ating mga bilihin. At kanina nga, nakausap natin ito si ate na ayon sa kanya ay asawa siya ng isang driver at dati daw ay mataas yung inuuwi ng kanyang asawa pero ngayon nasa 1 siya lang. Ma'am, ayos po. Yes po ma'am, pangalan po nila ma'am.
Ako po si Angelica Maranan po, isa pong operator at asawa po ng driver.
Magkano na lang po inuuwi ng asawa ko?
200, 150 po sa araw-araw po na biyahe ng asawa ko. Napupunta lang po sa mga langis at crudo po yung kanyang kinikita. Ma'am.
At ilan po kayo sa pamilya ma'am?
Dalawa po kami mag-asawa at 4 po yung pinag-aaral ko po. Tapos may maliit pa po kami, ma'am.
All right. Jazz, thank you very much, no? Okay, thank you, Jazz, for that report. We're running out of time, but we'd love to have you again. Thank you very much for reporting to us live from Pasig Public Market. And that wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. We hope we've given you just the right start to your morning. Let's make the day matter. I'm Pauline Verzosa. Kapatid, we are One News, all sides, all the time.